are wounds that heal clean, leaving only the faintest memory of pain, and there are wounds that transform you, remaking you into someone new, someone stronger. My transformation began with fire and was cemented by cruelty. The world looked at the river of pearlescent tissue the flames had carved into my skin and saw a tragedy, a story of loss. They never understood it was a story of becoming. The true before and after of my life was not the night of the fire that claimed my parents and my face, but the moment I learned that to the world, I was no longer a person with a mind and a heart, but a flaw to be pitied, a spectacle to be managed, or a monster to be mocked. I was 16 when I learned how kindness could be the sharpest blade of all. The high school charity auction was supposed to be my triumphant return to a normal life. The moment I stepped out from behind the curtain of hair I used as a shield. For 6 months, I had poured every ounce of my grief and my hope into my entry. The Phoenix Quarter, a visionary architectural model for revitalizing the city's derelict industrial heart. It was intricate, bold, and beautiful, born from countless solitary hours where my drafting table was my only confidant. As I carefully carried my creation toward the display table, my heart a frantic bird in my chest, he stepped into my path. Liam Croft, the mayor's son, our golden boy, the undisputed arbiter of our school's social hierarchy. His smile was a weapon, all polished white teeth and cold amusement. Liam, well, would you look at that, everyone. Elara's built a little model of what the burn ward should look like. How autobiographical. The laughter was a physical force, each chuckle another ember from the fire that had stolen my old life. But the cruelty that truly broke something inside me came next. Mrs. Abernathy, our art teacher and the head judge, a woman whose approval I had craved, floated over. She placed a condescending hand on my shoulder, her face a mask of performative pity. Mrs. Abernathy said, "Now, Liam, that's quite enough. We should be encouraging Elara. It's truly remarkable she can create anything at all, given everything." Given my face, the unspoken words hung in the air between us, more damning than Liam's outright mockery. My masterpiece, my Phoenix Quarter, did not win first prize that night. It received a special recognition certificate, a patronizing pat on the head for most improved student. They saw my scars. They never saw my vision. They saw a victim, not an architect. That night, I stood before the mirror in my bedroom, the faint scent of smoke from the gymnasium's decorations still clinging to my clothes. I traced the ridges and valleys of my transformed face, each one a contour line on a map of survival. My grandfather found me there, his own presence as solid and comforting as the stone he worked with. His hands, scarred and calloused from a lifetime of masonry, came to rest on my shoulders, their weight a silent anchor. Grandfather said, his voice a low, steady rumble, like stone grinding against stone. The world, my Elara, has a fondness for pretty pebbles. Smooth, easy things that are pleasant to hold and don't challenge the eye. But it is the scarred rocks, the ones that have endured immense pressure, searing heat, and the relentless passage of time, that become the foundations of cathedrals. These, he said, his thumb gently brushing the edge of my scarred cheek, are not flaws. This is your grain. This is where your strength lies. He left me then, but returned moments later with a worn leather roll. Inside was a set of old, brass architectural tools, their handles smoothed by generations of use, and a single, folded deed to his derelict stone workshop on the edge of the city. "Build your cathedral, Elara," he whispered, his eyes holding a fierce, unwavering faith. "Build it so tall and so strong that they have no choice but to look up and see your glory, not your scars." And so, with a heart full of fire and hands that had known both destruction and creation, I began. For 10 years, I became a ghost in my own city, a specter haunting the forgotten spaces. While Liam Croft attended a prestigious architecture school on his father's name and co-opted the language of urban innovation for shallow TED Talks, I was in my grandfather's workshop, learning the true, gritty language of cities. I learned the song of the saw, the poetry of poured concrete, the unyielding strength of steel, and the ancient, enduring soul of stone. I started small, impossibly small. My first project was a condemned laundromat on a street the city had long abandoned. The banks laughed at my loan applications. "Too risky," they said, their eyes, as always, flickering away from my face. The real risk, their averted gazes screamed, was me, So I used the small inheritance from my grandfather. I became a familiar, solitary figure on the construction site, my hair tied ruthlessly back, my scars exposed to the sun and the dust. I swung hammers, laid flooring, and mixed mortar until my hands bled. I learned plumbing and electrical work from old, grease-stained books and endless online tutorials. The local construction crews, a hardened, skeptical bunch, initially called me Scarface and Princess behind my back, placing bets on how soon I'd collapse into tears or give up. But I was always the first to arrive in the pre-dawn gloom and the last to leave, my silhouette outlined by the single bare bulb hanging in the window. The turning point came when I caught a critical structural flaw in the foreman's own plans, a miscalculation that would have sent a load-bearing wall crashing down. I had seen it, a slight inconsistency in the stress diagrams that everyone else had missed. The foreman, a grizzled man named Hank with a face like a relief map of a hard life, stared at my precise, hand-drawn corrections, then back at my face, his expression unreadable. "Hell of an eye you got, kid. Most of those fancy-pants architects in their downtown offices wouldn't see that beam was 3 degrees off plumb. They see the pretty pictures. You," he paused, tapping my drawing with a thick, dirty finger, "you see the bones of things." Respect, earned grudgingly and with immense effort, began to replace the mockery. Hank became my first true ally, my foreman on every project that followed. When the Grit and Grace cafe and artist studios opened in the resurrected laundromat, it was an instant word-of-mouth success. It had a raw, authentic beauty that the new, soulless glass towers downtown lacked. It had a soul I had breathed into it. The profit was modest, but the validation was a tidal wave. I reinvested every single cent. I repeated the process with a boarded-up warehouse, transforming it into airy, sunlit loft apartments, and a polluted industrial lot that became a community park with a playground at its heart. With each project, the reputation of Ethelberg Properties grew. I was the phantom developer, a mystery figure known for visionary, community-focused projects, never seen at the glamorous galas or in the society pages. I preferred the sight, the smell of fresh-cut wood and wet concrete. It was the one place where I was judged not by the landscape of my face, but by the quality of my work and the strength of my vision. And all the while, I watched Liam Croft. I studied his projects, his public statements, his insatiable ambition. I saw the city council, led by his father, greenlight his projects while putting endless obstacles in the path of smaller, more humane developers. I saw him poised to pounce on the city's crown jewel, the Croft Promenade, a billion-dollar waterfront development. And I saw that his design, all cold glass and privatized spaces, required a key parcel of land. The very heart of the abandoned industrial district I had dreamed of revitalizing since I was 16. While he was giving interviews, I was quietly, methodically, using the profits from my successes to buy that land, parcel by forgotten parcel. I became the owner of the ground his empire needed to stand on. The ghost was preparing to claim her throne. The day the city officially announced the Croft Promenade project, I knew the moment of confrontation had arrived. Liam's design, revealed in a blaze of self-congratulatory publicity, was everything I despised. A wall of glittering towers that would block the river from the public, a monument to luxury and exclusion. At the mandatory public forum, I sat in the very back row of the City Hall chamber, my hood drawn up, and listened to him spew corporate jargon about maximizing ROI and curating a premier lifestyle experience. The council members nodded along, mesmerized by the scale and the promised tax revenue. When the floor opened for questions, I stood. My voice, long unused to addressing a crowd, was quiet at first, but it cut through the polite atmosphere with the sharpness of a shard of glass. "Mr. Croft, your design eliminates the green corridors, the public market spaces, and the riverwalk access that were explicitly mandated in the city's original brief. Can you explain how walling off a public natural resource from the taxpayers who fund this city serves anyone other than your private investors?" Liam said, "Well, I'll be damned. If it isn't our town's own tragic heroine, still critiquing things from the sidelines, I see. Elara, this is a complex billion-dollar urban development, not a high school science fair. We have to think about global appeal and economic viability, not vegetable stalls and playgrounds. The old, familiar shame rose in my throat, hot and acidic. I could feel the eyes of the room upon me, some pitying, some amused. But then I felt it, the phantom, steadying grip of my grandfather's hand on my shoulder, the grain of your strength. I did not sit down. I did not cower. Instead, I reached up and pushed back my hood, letting the harsh, fluorescent light of the council chamber fall fully upon my face, illuminating every ridge and plane of my scars. A city's greatness, Mr. Croft, is not measured by its global appeal or the height of its luxury towers. It is measured by the quality of life, the dignity, and the happiness of the people who call it home. Your design is not just an aesthetic failure. It is a failure of imagination. And more than that, it is a failure of heart. I turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving a stunned, reverberating silence in my wake. The encounter ignited a firestorm. The next day, an anonymous, meticulously argued op-ed appeared in the city's leading newspaper, eviscerating the Croft Promenade as soulless, exclusionary, and a betrayal of the city's character. It was signed simply, "The Phoenix." Community groups, long ignored, mobilized. The public pressure became a torrent. In a panic, the mayor's office announced a radical, unprecedented solution, a head-to-head design competition. Croft & Co. would defend their design against one challenger, to be selected from a pool of applicants. I knew this was my moment. Ethelberg Properties, though still shrouded in mystery, was now a formidable multi-million-dollar enterprise. I submitted our application. The day the finalists were announced, the city was shocked. The only rival to the mighty Croft & Co. was not another corporate giant, but the enigmatic, community-beloved phantom developer. The competition rules forced my reveal. I had to step into the light. I walked into the City Hall briefing room for the first joint competitors meeting, my back straight, my posture that of a queen entering a court that had long dismissed her. I wore a simple, well-tailored suit, my hair pulled back into a severe, elegant knot that proudly framed my face. The collective gasp that rippled through the room was audible. Liam, who was holding court with his team of slick, suited associates, turned as white as the marble statues lining the hall. Liam said, You're Ethelberg. This is a joke, a pathetic joke. You're a contractor, a glorified handyman with a grudge. I am the woman who owns the land your project desperately needs, Liam. And I am the one who is going to show you, and this entire city, what architecture with a soul truly looks like. The war was declared. The months that followed were a sleepless, all-consuming battle. Liam worked with a team of 50 in a sterile, glass-walled high-rise, their process a blizzard of computer renderings, investor pitch decks, and focus group data. My team, a small, fiercely loyal band of brilliant misfits I had gathered over the years, worked alongside me in the chaotic, inspiration-filled mess of my grandfather's workshop. Our process was tactile, physical, human. We built detailed scale models with our own hands. We sourced sustainable, beautiful materials. And we held endless community meetings, listening, truly listening, to what the people of the city wanted and needed. My design, which I called the Phoenix Quarter in a direct homage to my teenage dream, was the absolute antithesis of his promenade. Where he had walls, I had bridges. Where he had private balconies, I had public rooftop gardens. Where he had underground parking lots, I had community centers, schools, and artist workshops woven seamlessly into the fabric of the residential spaces. It was a vertical village, a testament to integrated, sustainable, and human-centered living. The day of the final presentation arrived. The City Hall chamber was packed to capacity with news cameras lining the back wall. Liam presented first. His was a slick, vapid, computer-generated fly-through of his glittering towers, set to soaring, emotion-manipulating music. It was full of buzzwords, synergistic, curated, premier, but it was hollow, a beautiful shell with no heart. The council and the audience gave him polite, measured applause. Then it was my turn. I did not use a single digital slide. I nodded to Hank and my team, who wheeled in my physical, meticulously crafted scale model of the Phoenix Quarter. It was a work of art, every tiny bench, every tree, every window pane placed with intention. A soft murmur of awe went through the crowd. I walked to the center of the stage and stood beside my creation. I began to speak. I did not talk about square footage or investment returns. I told them a story. 10 years ago, a boy stood in a school gymnasium and mocked this dream. He saw the scars on my face and assumed they were a measure of my worth. Today, a man stands before you and tries to kill this same dream with glass and steel and cold ambition. But phoenixes, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper that forced everyone to lean in, are born to rise from ashes. I guided them through my model, pointing out the community gardens where neighbors could grow food together, the artist workshops that kept local culture alive, the schools nestled within the community so children wouldn't be bussed away from their neighborhoods. I showed how the design honored the district's industrial past by repurposing old foundations and incorporating historical elements, while using cutting-edge, sustainable technology for a green future. As I spoke, I saw the change in their faces. The council members, who had listened to Liam with professional detachment, were now leaning forward, their eyes alight with something I had never seen before, hope and genuine excitement. When I finished, there was a moment of absolute, profound silence, and then the room erupted, not in polite applause, but in a thunderous, cheering, foot-stomping ovation that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. It was led by the community activists in the audience, but it was soon joined by the business leaders, the architects in attendance, and finally, even the most stoic members of the city council. The vote, when it came, was swift and unanimous. Ethelberg Properties was awarded the billion-dollar contract for the Phoenix Quarter. But my revenge was not yet complete. True victory was not just in winning, but in building. In the devastating aftermath, Croft & Co. imploded. The very public humiliation of losing to me, the scarred girl he had once pitied, destroyed Liam's credibility. Clients fled, investors pulled out, and within a year his empire was a bankrupt shell. But I found I cared little for his failure. My focus, my obsession, was on the monumental task of bringing the Phoenix Quarter to life. For 5 years, I was the heart and soul of the construction site. My scarred face became a symbol not of pity, but of vision and unwavering standards. The workers no longer saw a victim. They saw a leader who understood their work because she had done it herself, who demanded perfection because she was willing to pour her own sweat into achieving it. We were not building structures, we were building a community. The day the Phoenix Quarter officially opened was the proudest of my life. The city declared a public holiday. Where there had been rust and decay, there was now life and laughter. Children splashed in fountains, couples strolled along the vibrant riverwalk, artists sold their wares in the sunlit market square, and the smell of fresh bread and coffee wafted from the ground floor cafes. It was everything I had dreamed of in that lonely school gymnasium, everything I had fought for in my grandfather's workshop. As I stood watching the beautiful, chaotic, joyful life of the community I had built, a young girl, no more than 8 or 9, approached me shyly. She had a fresh, pink scar on her cheek, the mark of a recent accident or surgery. She looked up at my face, her eyes tracing the lines of my scars, not with fear or disgust, but with wide-eyed awe. The young girl said, "You built this whole place. You're the lady my mom says can build anything." Her words, so simple and pure, washed over me, healing the last, hidden wounds of that long-ago humiliation. I knelt down, bringing myself to her eye level, the gravel of the pathway pressing into my knees. Unguarded smile stretched the scarred skin of my cheek. "That's right, I did. And you know what the secret is?" She shook her head, her eyes wide. "You can build anything, too. Anything you can dream." As she beamed and ran back to her mother, I saw a familiar figure standing in the shadow of a newly planted oak tree at the edge of the square. Liam Croft. He looked tired, diminished, his expensive clothes hanging loosely on a frame that seemed to have shrunk. He was watching the vibrant life of the square, the very square he had once mocked as a burn-ward fantasy. Our eyes met across the bustling crowd, across a chasm of years and choices. He didn't smile. He didn't scowl. He simply gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. It was not a nod of friendship or even of forgiveness. It was a nod of acknowledgement, of definitive, utter defeat. He had mocked the scars on my face, so I had built an empire of stone and spirit that made his look insignificant and hollow. He had tried to build walls to separate and elevate the privileged few, so I had built bridges to connect and uplift the entire community. The cracks he had once jeered at had, as my grandfather promised, become the grain of my unbreakable strength, a strength now etched permanently into the city's very skyline and the happy, beating heart of its people. The world had wanted pretty, uncomplicated pebbles, but it was the scarred, complex, and resilient rock that had become the cathedral, and my cathedral now housed a city.